Hi there. Coffee with Pastor Sue. It's almost the middle of June, or the end of June, actually. Who could have thunk it would have gone by so fast this year in one sense, and in other ways it hasn't gone fast enough. Got to thinking about this week about a question maybe for you. Have you ever had a job where there were parts of a job you really didn't like to do at all? In my almost 45 years of having jobs since I was a kid, the different jobs I've had over the years, the babysitting, the fence painting, the landscaping, the night desk clerk at a motel, dishwasher in restaurants, serving in restaurants, training staff, babysitting. What other jobs have I done over the years? I've been a file clerk for Bell Canada. I've been a waitress in a high-end restaurant. My last set of jobs were more in the social services field, working with persons who had disabilities, challenges. Some were in a return to work scenario in one company I worked for, and how we were able to support them. And the other company I worked for was more of a residential care and advocacy and all of those things that come for taking care of a person who's living in a group home scenario. And I'd have to say there were many times, there were many elements of the job I thoroughly loved and enjoyed, and learned quickly that it was the moments that were good. When there were good moments, that's what made the job so amazing. Because there were days where it was not so great. There were days things were happening. There were days things that were, just wasn't my cup of tea type of a thing. And elements that were not necessarily my strength or my preference, but you did it because that was a part of the job description, and you did it. You tried to do your best to do it well. You might have to had somebody come to you and say, "Hey, kind of slacked off a bit on that, haven't you? And let's work on this together." And in all of that, what I learned was that as we continue to develop relationships, and we choose to develop them based on the character of Christ, that even correction done with graciousness and mercy goes such a long way, and is so effective and so God honoring in how you do that. So, you know, there are voices in all areas of our life. Hey, you can't do that way. I forbid you. Well, let's try. Let's find a way to make something work. And if we can't, then let's see where it goes from there. There was a couple of things I've been reading this week. One, I've just been kind of thinking a little bit about Nehemiah and how he equipped the folks who were rebuilding the wall around the city he had come from, that he had been taken from. He was living in exile. He served the king that he was in exile to well, obviously, because when he went to the king and said, "Can I go home for a while and fix the walls around the city I was taken from? Because it's a real mess, and that bothers me a lot, and I'd like to take care of that, because that's part of my heritage, and that's part of what God has for me, and I feel that I need to go and do that." And obviously he had served the king well. Even when he was in an awful situation and was where he didn't want to be, the king granted him favor. He gave him a letter of passage. You'll have no problem getting through all the enemy territories because you have my name to go before you and with you. You'll have all the supplies you need, and we'll take care of all of those details for you to do what it is that God has called you to do. And so he arrived at the city, and it was a mess. It was exactly what he knew it would be. And the physical mess of the wall itself was a huge job. But when you look into the tones and attitudes of the people who were around at the time, there were people in there who really did want to rebuild the wall. They wanted their home safe again. They wanted their community safe again. They wanted their values and their ability to serve God to be protected and enhanced. And so Nehemiah was an answer to prayer for them. And then there were people there who were like, I'm enjoying living in this because I have a certain amount of control. I have a certain amount of prestige. I have a certain amount of, I'm kind of the king of the hill, and, don't mess with what I've got. And you never know when the enemy's going to come. Well, you just do that, right? Nehemiah demonstrated something that I think is of great value in how we serve God in our day-to-day living, not just our calling to ministry, not just our calling to the giftings and the strengths he has given us. Nehemiah served well because he brought people together by encouraging them and strengthening them and being there for them. And he came alongside them. He didn't preach at them and said, you must do this, and I'm just going to go over here and talk a bit more about somebody else to something else. Have you ever been on those work sites? And it's an interesting little joke, especially if you live in an area where there's an awful lot of road crews. And as a kid, me growing up, we counted how many hard hats were one color and how many was the other. And if there was only one of, I believe, a white, that was the foreman, right? And sometimes the running joke was, well, how many does it take to fix this, and well, 3 to hold this and 1 to do that. And it was just like, not everybody did the same amount of work, it sounded like. In this story in the Bible, it talks where Nehemiah says to them, we're all going to do the same work. We all have the same amount of tools. We all have the same amount of equipment. We've been given stuff by the king that I've just come from. Our tools may not be the best, may not be the greatest, but we're going to make them work. We're going to take care of each other. So during a time when half of us are building, the other half will be protecting them if there's an enemy attack. And then we'll switch. And then there was a period of time in the building where everybody had a tool to help rebuild the wall in one hand, and they had a weapon for self-defense in the other. And I'm pretty sure there were people there who were kind of going, I'm far more comfortable with this hammer than I am with this sword. I do not like the idea of having to do something with a sword, but let me use the hammer to help build the wall. That's the part I'll do. I feel that that's all I can contribute. And in this particular part of the story, I've learned something absolutely fascinating. It takes all of us to build the kingdom. It takes all of us to work together to be the body of Christ. It takes all of us in all of our strengths and in all our weaknesses and in all of our availability to continually keep building the kingdom of Christ here, for leading people to Jesus. It takes all of us to speak about Jesus. It takes all of us to live for Jesus, to be that example in our community. And in doing so, none of us technically is exempt from a job because, oh, I'm too important for that job. This is my job only, and I only do this job. We're not exempt. We all do all parts of the job. We function well as a full body. And in that, I believe we bring glory to God in a way that we may never know here, but one day we'll see it in heaven. You have no idea what your story is going to be for somebody and how it influences them to serve Jesus. And so the obedience is in telling your story, even if it's not your favorite part of your life, but you tell it. And then let God do the work with it. When we obey and do exactly what he calls us to do, when we look at every opportunity as a time for us to do something for Jesus, God can turn it into something far bigger and far better than anything we'd ever dreamed of or thought of. And we can all be in places, not because of status or anything like that, but we can be in a place where it's like, well done, thou good and faithful servant. At the end of our lives, to be able to say that, to hear that being said to us, because we've been faithful servants. And that to me, I think, is the heart cry I have, that when I look at a new scenario, what part do you want me to serve here, Lord? What part do you want me to be a faithful servant for you? And what is that going to look like for this particular scenario I am in? And maybe that's something we can think about this week. Lord, what is our faithful obedience to you going to look like today? Does it mean I'm going to do the thing I don't like to do? that type of a thing. Doesn't mean I get to do the thing that I'm gifted at and it just happens and it's wonderful, it's amazing. It could be. It could be either or, and it could be both. On occasion, we're going to be asked to hold a sword and a hammer to help rebuild. And whatever that looks like for you in the symbolism of that, it could be that's what it's going to be. Those will be moments we got to do what we got to do because that's exactly what's needed for the situation. And other moments are going to be absolute joy. And how did time pass by so fast? We were having fun. So, yeah, we can all learn something new. I've learned how to do videos. Who would have thunk that? Anyway, because my code word with any technology stuff at the office, don't tell them, is Crayola. Because there are days I'm just like, don't teach me any more tech stuff. I just want to color with crayons. It's easy. And yet, we can do new things because of who He is in us. And when we serve Him for His purposes, then He rewards us with faithfulness and well done. Thou good and faithful servant, well done. Let it be a great week. Let me know how it's going, and we'll talk to you later. Bye now.